Hello, and welcome to Valuable Patents, a crash course. If you're watching this, then you're probably interested not just in patents, but what makes a patent valuable. There are many patents that have little value. In this video, we are going to talk about what makes a patent worth money. We are going to assume that you already understand the basics of what patents are. If so, then keep watching. If you need a refresher on the basics, there are numerous other videos on my channel and other channels on YouTube to get caught up if you need it. This video includes some material I previously released in multiple videos, conveniently all in one place, along with some new information, so now let's get right into it. What makes a patent worth money? It comes down to 4 basic points. First point, would anyone want to do what this patent covers? If there is a strong desire to make the product or use the product that a patent covers, that patent could be worth money. Let's take a look at this in a little more detail. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say I make an improvement to the well-known toothbrush. I discover as an inventor that instead of using plastic bristles, I make the bristles out of solid 14-karat gold. And the reason is, through my research, I discovered that the gold acts as an antibacterial agent and reduces tooth decay by 0.3%. And also, the toothbrush is now really expensive. So not a lot of bang for the buck, as they say, right? We improved dental hygiene only slightly, and now the toothbrush is ridiculously expensive. So, this idea is not commercially viable, and it's not likely to be commercially viable in the future. So even if I get a patent on this concept, no one is going to be interested in it. My patent probably won't be worth very much. Now this is a contrived example for illustration purposes, but let's look at a few considerations. Let's take a look at some factors of commercial viability. First, let's ask ourselves, does it make commercial sense right now to do this? If yes, then it's something we want to protect. But if the answer is no, don't give up just yet. Let's ask the next question, does it make commercial sense within the next 5 years? This is important because patents often take a few years to get from the time you file an application to the time you actually get the patent. And maybe what doesn't make commercial sense right now today would make sense in a few years. As an example, consider the cost of computer memory. In 2010, if your invention required a 4 terabyte hard disk, that might be cost prohibitive. But 5 years later, by 2015, that probably would not be cost prohibitive because the state of the technology had improved to the point where a product that required a hard disk of that size would be commercially feasible. So if in 2010 you envisioned an invention that required a 4 terabyte hard disk, by the time your patent issued, the commercial viability would have improved. So don't just ask, does it make sense right now? Ask if it might make sense within a few years. And on that theme of looking into the future, another factor of viability is, will it address a problem that we don't know about yet or don't have yet? And let's take a look at an example of that. Let's take a ride on a time machine back to 2005. And this is what the typical mobile phone looked like back then. If you were lucky, it had a camera, maybe a calculator, and a calendar on board. But it typically did not have GPS-based navigation. However, if we were keeping up with industry trends, in 2005 we might be aware that touchscreen-enabled, internet-connected phones with GPS-based navigation capabilities are on the way. So in a few years, maybe people will want to use these as navigation devices in their cars. Let's invent a way to hold these devices in a car. And so if in 2005 we file such a patent application on a device holder, then by 2009 we may have something that is commercially viable and hence something that people want to use. So this is an example of a problem or need that arises based on changing conditions. In this case, the availability of smartphones with navigation apps and so forth. If we can file a patent application on something that people are going to want to be doing within a few years, then it could be a valuable concept to cover. The trick is looking at where industry and technology and social trends are heading and trying to get out in front of that by a few years. Since it typically takes a few years for a filed patent application to become an issued patent, looking 3 to 5 years ahead and trying to predict what will be happening can then help create valuable patents. So hopefully, from those examples, you can see that to be valuable, a patent needs to cover something that people want to do now or will want to do in the near future. Now on to the second aspect of valuable patents, which is difficulty of design around. If the patent is too specific, then people may be able to basically accomplish the same goal that the patent is doing without actually doing what is in the patent claims. That is considered easy design around. If the patent is broad enough that it is relatively inconvenient to get around the patent, then that patent may be worth even more money. That is considered difficult design around, and that is what is desirable to make a patent valuable. So let's take a look at this in a little more detail. So here's an example that I took from the auto industry. Now, while General Motors does in fact have multiple patents in this area, what I've done here is edit the claims and change them a bit for the purposes of simplification and illustrating the examples that I want to present to you. So these are not the exact words of the claims from a General Motors patent, but hopefully this will give you the idea. So let's take a look at this claim. So we have a vehicle that includes a power lock system and an automatic transmission, when the power lock system is configured and disposed to go to a lock configuration upon detecting a transition from a park gear to a reverse gear. So basically what this means is that as soon as you shift from park to reverse, the power locks lock. And note that even in this implementation, if you are planning to go forward by putting the car in drive, you pass through reverse first. So basically, no matter what happens, we transition from park to reverse, and in fact, the power locks lock when that happens. So you saw the video showing our implementation, assuming that we are playing the role of General Motors here, and you can see that this claim covers our implementation. So if a competitor tries to do the exact same thing as us, our patent claim here should cover it, and we can force our competitor to cease and desist or request a royalty or patent sale to enable our competitor to continue. However, we aren't capturing the spirit of the invention with this claim. How can we do that? How can we change this claim or add other claims to help capture the spirit of the invention? First, let's ask ourselves, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this invention? Well, it's safety, right? As we drive around, we want the doors locked so we don't fall out and nobody can get in. So now I'll ask the question, how else can we get this effect? How else can we get the doors to lock automatically without doing what our claim says? I'll put the claim back on the screen, and if you are able to, I suggest pause the video here and take a look at this claim for 2 or 3 minutes and think about other ways we can accomplish the spirit of the invention without doing each element of this claim. Okay, moving on. Let's see how Volkswagen addresses this issue. Here again is the GM claim, transition from park to reverse is what it covers. And it's on the transition from park to reverse where we're going to lock the doors. Now let's see what Volkswagen does. The Volkswagen products activate the locks when the vehicle speed exceeds a predetermined limit, say 10 miles per hour. The trigger mechanism is speed of the vehicle. It has nothing to do with the transmission gear. So the original GM claim that is specific to the implementation is not going to stop Volkswagen here in our example. So there's one problem. It does not cover a product that triggers the locks based on vehicle speed. But we have even more problems. Take a look at this vehicle here. This is a newer vehicle than what was shown in the video. It has a push-button transmission. What's that mean? Well, with this push-button transmission, I can go straight from park right to drive. I do not have to go through reverse to get to drive with this setup. So here is another way to beat this claim. And you might be thinking, well, this patent was written 20 some years ago. We wouldn't have known to expect this push-button configuration. But that is exactly what a good patent professional will try to do. Look for ways to try to broaden your claims and make your patent a little bit more future resistant. And by the way, these push button arrangements are not new. Here is an arrangement from a 1964 Chrysler. Interesting that it doesn't even have a park gear. So this one definitely would not infringe our claim because it doesn't even have a park gear to begin with. And that, of course, reminds us of manual transmissions where, again, there is no park gear. So let's take another look at our original claim to cover the GM implementation and see how we can broaden it to capture the spirit of the invention. First, let's look at this clause. Transition from park to a reverse gear. That's totally unnecessary. Let's just leave it here without the transitioning to the reverse gear. This way, if we go out of park to any other gear, whether it's reverse or directly to drive or a low gear, our claim covers it. As long as we're coming out of park, that's our trigger to lock the power locks. Then we can add another claim like this. This covers the implementation such as the Volkswagen implementation where we use speed as a trigger. Of course, to be effective, we need to get these claims on file before our competitor comes up with this implementation. We can't do it after the fact. But when we were writing the original patent 20 years ago, assuming the competition, in this case Volkswagen, had not yet developed a solution, as we, GM, may have had a chance to patent this implementation as well. But take a look at the claim again. The word forward may be yet another unnecessary limitation. What if we just say detecting motion? Then, if we detect forward or reverse motion, we can then cover the implementation with this claim. So to recap, here are two claims we can include in our fictional patent. The first one covers the GM implementation, transition from a park gear, and the second one covers the Volkswagen implementation based on speed. So by thinking about the spirit of the invention when we write our claims, we can help reduce the risk of design around, thereby helping to make a strong patent. So hopefully those examples give you a sense of what design around is and how claims can be worded to try to reduce the risk of it. The next aspect is discoverability. If everyone wants to use your invention and it's hard to design around, but there's no way to know that someone is using your invention, then it will be pretty hard to get people to pay for using your invention. So let's dig into this aspect in a little more detail. So again, discoverability is a measure of how easy it is to know if someone is infringing your patent claims. I like to classify discovery into 4 levels, with the first level being the easiest. So, level 1 is visual inspection. That means that just by looking at a competing product, you can tell that the device or whatever the thing is infringing your patent. This is ideal. It doesn't always happen, but if you can get level 1 discoverability in some of your claims, that is a good thing. With level 2, you might have to do a little work to determine if something's being infringed. For example, for a product, you may have to take it apart to figure out if it is infringing your patent. Level 3 discoverability is even harder than simply taking something apart. It may require extensive reverse engineering to figure out how something was made or how a process was performed. It may require specialized equipment or skill. In other words, it may be much harder to determine if infringement is happening than simply taking something apart. Level 4 discoverability is even harder. In such a scenario, the only way to know is to have some inside information about the infringing product, say from someone who works on the product or has designed the product. For things that are hard to discover, such as level 3 and level 4, then you may want to consider if a trade secret is more appropriate than a patent application. I have an episode explaining the difference between a trade secret and a patent, and I will put that in the description below. So just to recap, the more discoverable your claims are, the easier it is to find out that someone is infringing your patent. A patent that is being infringed is potentially valuable. You might be able to collect monetary damages or have leverage to sell or license your patent to the infringing parties. Finally, before you file your own patent application, review the claims and see if at least a few of your claims are discoverable, as they can be for covering your invention. Ask yourself, how am I going to know if somebody is covering these claims? How am I going to know if somebody's doing this? After all, if there's no way to know that your patent is being infringed, then it's highly unlikely that someone will pay money to license or buy your patent. So as you can see, a valuable patent will have claims that are discoverable. It is possible, maybe with some effort, to determine that a patent is being infringed. Finally, we want an identifiable infringer. Who will we threaten to sue if our invention is being used? Hopefully someone or a company who can pay. Let's dig into this area in a little more detail. And as a quick refresher, claims are the legalese at the end of an issued patent that states specifically what the patent covers. Basically, the claims spell out what others are not allowed to do without your permission. If someone or something is covering all the elements of one of your claims, then your patent is said to have been infringed. An infringement of your patent may make you eligible for damages, which is often monetary compensation, or it may give you leverage for selling or licensing your patent. The amount of damages or compensation you can collect from your patent often depends on who infringes it. That is why the question of who is important. In order to infringe, a user must infringe all elements of the claim. Here is a fictitious sample claim with 3 elements: lens, LiDAR, and motor. All 3 elements must be present to infringe the patent claim. Lens, most cameras will have a lens. Motor, possibly. LiDAR, who knows? Maybe a camera uses sound instead of LiDAR for range finding for the purpose of autofocus. So, in that case, a camera that didn't use the LiDAR would not have infringed this claim 1. If you need an introduction to what the claims are, check out the patent claims introduction video that I put a link for in the description below. So in order to figure out who is going to infringe our patent, we need to know what a patent can actually protect. And it can protect articles or devices or methods of doing things, processes. So these are the type of things a patent can cover. A patent can protect the making of the invention that's set forth in the claims, the using of that invention that's set forth in the claims, or it can protect the selling of the invention that is used in the claims. So you can prevent someone from making, using, or selling the claimed invention while your patent is in force. Another factor we need to consider is where does the infringement take place. For a United States patent, the area that the U.S. patent covers is the United States. It's important to note that there's no such thing as a worldwide or global patent. You need to file a different application in each jurisdiction that you want protection in. Now, where the infringing activity takes place is not always a simple matter. For example, let's say that I have an invention involving software. I have a server right there in the United States, and it interacts with different clients in the United States. Then everything takes place in the United States, which is good in terms of trying to find infringement for my United States patent. But of course, with internet and cloud computing inventions, certain aspects of an invention can be on the client device, and that might not be in the United States. So the first order of business, I want to make sure that my claims cover activity that will completely take place within the United States. This type of issue is especially relevant in software inventions, and I have an episode that addresses this in more detail for software, and I will put a link to that video in the description below. But we're not done yet. Let's assume, just for the moment, that we're strictly in the United States. We have a server operated by a big corporation, and we have individual end users. Those individual end users don't nearly have the amount of money that the big corporation has. So depending on how the claims are written, who infringes, the company or the end user? If it's the end user, then we could go after individual infringers, but that could involve many lawsuits where each lawsuit involves only small amounts of potential damage. Or we could write claims that cover the server side and go after the corporate infringer. So in terms of who we want the claims to cover, I use the following acronym. SRUS. We are looking for SRUS. SRUS stands for a single infringer that infringes every element of my claim, preferably someone rich with deep pockets. They have a lot of money, so that increases my likelihood of being able to collect damages and compensation, making my patent more valuable. U.S. based. We want somebody in the United States for the purposes of a United States patent. Now, other jurisdictions have similar intellectual property laws, so if you are concerned about a different jurisdiction, say Canada, Korea, Germany, India, for example, then for patents in those jurisdictions, substitute that jurisdiction instead of the United States. And we typically want an entity, a corporation, over a single individual as the infringer. So we can go after someone with some means and incentive to compensate us. After all, if you try to sue an individual for infringing your patent, they may just quit doing the infringing activity, which limits your potential to collect. Whereas a company that has invested a lot of time and money to do something is more likely to want to work something out if possible, making your patent potentially more valuable. So just to recap, when reviewing your own patent claims before filing your application, ask who will infringe. Hopefully a single entity does the infringing. What we don't want is that entity A infringes the first half of the claim and entity B infringes the second half of the claim. While it's possible to pursue damages in those joint infringer scenarios, it becomes much more complicated. Ask where the infringement will take place. Hopefully for a U.S. patent, the infringement will take place in the United States. And consider the status of the infringer. We want the infringer preferably to be a company that has a vested interest in continuing the activity, providing them the incentive to buy or license your patent. So finally, remember SRUS, single rich U.S.-based entity, as something to consider when filing your own patents. So if you made it to here, congratulations. You now know more about what goes into making a valuable patent. If you are trying to protect your invention and going through all the work and expense of getting a patent, you may as well try to make it as valuable as you can. When professional patent valuation experts look over a patent to assess its worth, these are some of the main criteria they look at. So hopefully you found this info all in one video helpful. If so, please share, like, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.